you know, so for me, I've never really been too phased by the Dubai stuff, because I mean that's great, and I think it's important for people to be able to also express themselves, because eventually if you're capable and you're able to make the trip and take your family with you, or just go alone and have a good time, by all means you should, and nobody can throw stones at you for doing that, because we're all dealing with this thing one way or the other, right? No matter how rich or how poor you might be. And of course, that experience of the whole pandemic will definitely differ, given your financial, capabilities. And so I want to look at this conversation more from people who don't necessarily have the financial capabilities, for people who are really struggling, people who are not making the money, people who are, just going through some really, really tough times. And how amazing they are when it comes to finding ways, tactics, and models of how they want to operate their life, or how they operate their lives, where it allows them to still function, even though pretty much everything is in limbo around them. From an independent entrepreneurial and artistic point of view, it is absolutely needless to say that what we are going through as artists, as creatives in general, as entrepreneurs, independent workers, whatever you want to call yourself, it's unprecedented. It forces you to tap into your skills, to tap into skills you didn't even know existed before we got hit by this whole thing. And in the process of shifting things, shifting operations, shifting your vision, shifting your perception, you can lose yourself. You can have a feeling of not being worthy enough, of not being capable enough. And I think that this is really something that causes one to be exposed to various levels of stress and depression and despair, and even pushing people to the extreme of ending their lives. And that's where it's really, really, really sad, because there is ways, there are ways to solution this whole thing, and it is sad that one feels so overwhelmed that they don't feel like life is worth it anymore. And but I understand it. I don't co-sign it, but I do understand why people might feel like it's overwhelming and might feel like it's just too much for one person to take, because it is indeed too much for one person to take. That's why we need community. We need to be together as much as possible. We need to check on one another, and it is clear to me. It is rather clear to me that a year in, we're not seeing too much difference in the ways people behave and people act towards one another. If anything, there is a sense of indifference in there's a sort of like indifference, as we say in French, which is like not caring, or only caring for those really close to you, but then anything outside of that, because it's already a lot to do with your own shit, you don't see the point of really, like, you might feel somewhere for someone else's situation, but you got your own shit to deal with, in other words. And I think that this is where the problem is. And when as a community we are not able to grasp the importance of really checking in on one another, and if it means just checking in on your closest people, then do that, and have them check on their closest people, etc., etc., etc. But there needs to be that chain of solidarity with in interactions, in caring for one another, in wanting to see the best happen in one another's life, and I see too many people get discouraged over the the occurrences of all these challenges, and I understand it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, look, I had to reshape completely the perspective of the business I'm in. Reshape my vision, reshape my approach, reshape my whole strategy. And I think that as much as it's stressful and as much as it has been really demanding, I'm the type of guy, I don't mind putting in the work. I love what I do what I love, and I'll put the extra hours. It's not a problem. I sleep 5 to 6 hours a day, and that's my thing, and I'm cool like that. And when I need to sleep more, then I'll sleep more. But it's just my system is configured in that way where I'm always, pushing. And by pushing, I mean I'm always working on new ways, solutions, ideas, concepts. Okay, what am I doing here? For example, this whole show, I design everything myself. I don't outsource, what I can do. The visuals that you see, all these things, even the introduction that you see for the show, I do everything myself. From launching my website, and it might not be necessarily looking as super tight as it could be if it was done by a super pro, but you got to look at cost, when you in these situations, and in general, but even more so when we're dealing with a situation where we are not working, because for those of you who may not know, maybe discovering the show, may not necessarily know who I am. I'm a music producer, I'm a DJ, label owner. I used to pay my bills and be able to live a okay life, traveling around the world and playing and producing music. Now it's not possible anymore. Clubs are closed, and the only ways now that we have are through this YouTube or other means of interactions, Twitch, etc. So, and when you're clearly looking at the numbers, well, on a monthly basis, you don't make. I mean, it's ridiculous, but you can't be looking at short-term returns. That's where you really have to identify again what is your threshold of sustaining the level of pressure and the level of courage it requires to be able to have months where you just have enough to cover certain costs and not enough to cover others, and that's okay. You can't beat yourself up because you don't have enough. This is the thing. You're not the only one dealing with this shit. You won't be the last one dealing with it, and it's a global pandemic. I found it to be also absolutely abominable that honest people, hardworking people, creatives, entrepreneurs, etc., are going through really tough times, having to pay employees, etc., having to lay off people, and having to sort of like find new ways and means to survive and make ends meet, really. Being threatened, for example, by the landlords, or having to lose their home, and having to move to, tiny little places, because, they're not being given the support, right? They're not being given the opportunity to even, take the time that's going to be needed, but for them to be able to, in the end, recover. Because this is the thing, this is gonna end. And there's going to be new beginnings, and there's going to be new opportunities, and business is going to come back. So, and as a matter of fact, if you are creative enough, you will find ways and means to make things happen business-wise right now. It's easier said than done, I agree. But if you're not trying, you won't get it. As my good friend and brother from another, Nuno, who's also my agent, Nuno says, a no is always guaranteed. And even though I don't agree on that all the time, I know what it means, and I think it's true. If you start a conversation, or if you get into the mindset of understanding that, if you at least understand that, yeah, it's true, it's possible that I may get a no. It's possible that I may not get what I want initially, but it's also very possible that I may get it as well. So there comes your own perception and your own mental capacity, right, to look beyond the limitations that you create in your mind. You see, it all comes down to, working on your mental flexibility. Because resilience is a sense of flexibility. Resilience is flexibility. It's being able to go to a point where most would break and still find it in you to hold yourself together, to keep yourself together.